It is time to unveil my best bet season win totals for the upcoming college football season. Next, right here on Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Carter. Waits for it. Hit. Caught.
They said you can't be Ohio State. Now what?
Brady gets terrific. Throws it, and a touchdown, Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him, and a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
Win it. We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Go Blue, I'm Steve Deace. Welcome to this week's episode of Michigan Podcast. If you have been one of our Patreon supporters, this is going to be old hat to you. But for those of you that are not, you get your first glimpse of my best bet season win totals for the 2023 college football season. Why do you want to take a look at these? Because historically, since I started doing these in 2017, they have been pretty good. How good? Take a look at this. 29, 14, and 1. 29, 14, and 1. That is 66%. You can have a nice vacation on 66%. So with that as the lead-in, here are my 10 win total best bets for this coming college football season. We're going to start with BYU. I'm going to go over 4.5. I think when you look at the walk-on program there, which they are using, like Michigan, frankly, to circumvent the scholarship limits via NIL, you look at how many times per year they've, as an independent or as a group of 5 team over the years, they have played Power 5 teams. I think they're far more prepared to break in for a Power 5 schedule in a place like the Big 12 than, say, Cincinnati or Houston happens to be. So I will take BYU over 4.5. Next, Team Michigan saw last year. I'm going to go over 4.5 with Colorado State. They have hit the transfer portal hard. I really like Jay Norvell as a coach. This is one of, along with Boise State, maybe one of the best equipped from an administrative and facilities and resources standpoint programs in the Mountain West, probably right up there again with Boise State, San Diego State. They got better as the year went on. We saw them early in the year with a lot of new faces. I think they go over 4.5 in Jay Norvell's second year and get to a bowl game. Speaking of a team that Jay Norvell played for in college, I'm going to go over 7.5 for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Frankly, I think this is stealing. Now, pretty much every year, Iowa's win total, like for the last 20 years, has almost always been 7.5 or 8. But man, they got a competent quarterback, more than a competent quarterback in our very own former quarterback, Cade McNamara. And look at that schedule. There are not a lot of L's on that schedule. You know, under Phil Parker, they will play some defense. So I like Iowa over 7.5 this year. Sticking in the Big Ten, I had Indiana over 3.5 last year, and that cashed. This year, I'm going under 4 for Indiana. I think they are by far the worst team in our league heading into the season. I think Tom Allen is dead man walking, and I just don't see 5 wins on that schedule. To me, the worst I do is a push. And if you can find, anytime you can find a season win total where you think the worst you're going to do is a push, it is very tempting to take that. And so I'm going to. Mississippi State, I was on them last year. I had them over 6.5 last year. This year I'm going under 6.5. I think the coaching change there with the sudden death of Mike Leach, who died suddenly right before the bowl game. And now changing to Zach Arnett, who's unproven. He's a defensive guy, wants to run more of a more conventional, balanced kind of an offense, which basically will take your best player, Will Rogers, and diminish his ability to impact the game. They lost quite a bit in the transfer portal. They're in the toughest division in college football, except maybe the Big Ten East. I'm going under 6.5 with Mississippi State. Old Dominion. This is another where I just don't see 5 wins on the schedule. I just don't. To me, I think, and with the half, I don't see a push here. I like this one a lot. I think this is one of the weaker rosters in the group of 5. They are also moving up in class to the American Athletic Conference. I just don't think they're ready to win 5 games playing in that league. Going back to the Big Ten, I'm going under 5.5 with Purdue. Boilermakers lost an absolute ton from their team that finally got to the Big Ten championship game a year ago, and including their head coach, Jeff Brom. Now you're going to Ryan Walters. You went from an offensive wunderkind to a defensive wunderkind. I don't understand the hype for Hudson Card. I watched him play several times at Texas. I kind of just thought he was meh. So I think a transition year for Purdue. I don't see this team getting to a bowl game, so I'm going under the 5.5. Speaking of, I don't see a way to lose. This could at worst be a push. I'm going Rice under 5. I think you're getting value here because Rice did get to a bowl game, which they do about once every 15 to 20 years. They did get to a bowl game last year, but that was via the APR exception. They don't bring back as much production as you think. Yes, they're bringing in JT Daniels, who is now on his, 4th school. I don't care. I don't see Rice getting to 6 wins. I think the worst that I do here, again, is the push. And when you've got a win total where you think at best, or at worst, I should say, you're going to push, I think you have to be really aggressive in taking a look at that. So I'm going to do that with the Rice Owls, under 5. Let's go to one of the teams last year that really shook up the sport and was one Hendon Hooker injury away from probably being in the college football playoff. That's Tennessee. I'm going Tennessee under 9.5 because I've seen Joe Milton play at 2 different schools. And I saw why Hendon Hooker beat him out for the job. Yes, I know what he did in the bowl game last year. I just don't trust Joe Milton week to week. Behind him is a true freshman. And Tennessee lost a ton. They lost a lot to the NFL draft. I think you're getting a good value here because of how much they surprised last year, so that number's a little inflated. I'm going under 9.5 with Tennessee. I think they're probably an 8-4, at best 9-3 team. I'm going to go under 4.5. If you don't know that logo, it's because you probably have a life, unlike me. That is the logo of the glorious Texas State Bobcats, no longer the fighting Jake Spavitals. It doesn't matter. I don't see that team getting to 5 wins either, so I'm taking under 4.5 with Texas State. And that'll do it. Those are my 10 season win total best bets for the 2023 college football season. We'll come back. We'll find out what our good friend Mark Rogers thinks about those 10 picks. And then we'll discuss something that has not happened in many a moon. Michigan and Ohio State have the same preseason win total. When was the last time that happened? We'll discuss which one is more likely to go under when we come back. All right, let's get some reaction from our good friend and perhaps the world's only reasonable bucknut, Mark Rogers, who, man, he looks good with that Michigan helmet over his shoulder, Mark. That's a natural fit right there, brother. That looks great.
It's a framing issue, Steve, is what it is. I never know what you're going to do to manipulate my shot. There we go, a little bit better. There we go. We can bring some real gear into the picture. Very nice.
Mark has a fantastic college football channel, and I'm telling you, particularly this time of year, with things like win totals and future bets to get ahead of markets, to get a lot of information. They've got correspondents and reporters and analysts and team people from all across the sport all over the country on his channel, The Voice of College Football on YouTube. Make sure you don't miss it. So, Mark, I have been doing season win totals here since 2017. In the last 5 years, I am 29, 14, and 1. That's 66%. I rolled out with 10 season win total best bets. This is the most I've ever had. I typically have around 6 to 8. But there were too many I liked that I just could not say no to. Which ones stood out to you the most, either that you agreed with the most or disagreed with the most?
I hope your audience appreciates that. 29 and 14 in these win totals. That's tough against the Vegas number. So I'm going to go with the Power 5, as you might imagine. I'm discarding these Texas states and the Old Dominions of the world and going straight to the Power 5. So there are 3, Steve, that I love, one that I hate, one that I'm leaning your way, and one that I'm leaning against you.
Nice.
Okay. BYU is going to be fascinating, of course, with the move to the Big 12. I have often said in analyzing schedules off season that BYU used to play the most bizarre schedule, but now they're in a league, so more of a uniform schedule. There's no K-State, there's no UCF on the BYU schedule. You've got them at over 4.5, and of course, that would be laughable typically with BYU playing their typical independent schedule. But this was one of the worst defenses in the country, but it was also one of the better offenses in the country. A lot of high-scoring games last year. They bring in Keaton Slovis to replace Jaron Hall. And just looking at the schedule and trying to get to that 5 number, they've got 2 gimmies out of conference that gets them 40% of the way there. I just think you're in good shape with BYU at least 5 and 7. So I love that one. Purdue at under 5.5. Ryan Walters, I think, is an up-and-comer. I think he's going to have a good stay at Purdue. I hear good things about him, but this first season is going to be rough. I credit Purdue. They've got an interesting out-of-conference schedule where they don't play a murderer's row. They don't play an elite
It might be
program.
the toughest non-conference schedule in the Big Ten, actually.
Yeah, they have no gimmies, none. They've got to go on the road to Blacksburg with Virginia Tech down, but still it's on the road. Fresno State, one of the tougher group of 5 opponents you're going to have to face. And then, of course, Syracuse, whom they lost to last year. So that's a rough out-of-conference schedule. Then Ohio State and Michigan. Yes, the under 5.5, I think you're solid there. I'm right there with you. They just were obliterated from a personnel standpoint on offense, losing Charlie Jones and Aiden O'Connell. And, of course, Jeff Brom, I think, one of the best offensive minds in football.
Just to itemize that with Purdue, looking at that non-conference schedule, if they lose one of those games, they now have to go over. And they could very well, they open against Fresno State and Jeff Tedford. You mentioned it, Syracuse. Syracuse is actually bringing a little bit more back than I think people realize, including the quarterback, Garrett Schrader. All right, so if they even lose one of those games, Mark, then they have to have a winning record in the league with a conference schedule that includes both Ohio State and Michigan. All right, so good luck with that. I think that's a pretty good bet, actually.
Yeah, I really do too. I really love that one with Purdue. And then the other one would be Tennessee. Again, I like Josh Heupel. I think he's doing good things overall. However, they may really miss Hendon Hooker with your old buddy Joe Milton taking over a quarterback who looked good in spot starts, spot duty last year until the bowl game against Clemson. Then he performed extremely well. So if we get that version of Joe Milton, who knows? But when you look at Georgia and then a trip to Alabama, that's already 2 on the board. They're going to trip up somewhere else. Tennessee is going to, yes, hit that under 9.5. Okay, here's the one that I hate. Iowa. You're taking a shot at Iowa going 7 and 5. Under 7.5 for the Hawkeyes.
No, I'm going over.
Oh, I messed that up.
That's
so
all
I
right.
love everything you got. I was going to crush you on that one.
The Iowa over 7.5, I think, is almost stealing money. I think it's almost free money.
Okay, that's where I thought. Okay, I'm sorry, I misinterpreted that one.
That's okay.
Because oh my goodness, Michigan State's at home, Purdue, Northwestern, Rutgers, better quarterback play. Yes,
I mean, to me, Iowa will improve, even if their defense takes a step back, given what they lost, which is very possible. All right, let's say on defense, they're still going to be a top 20, 25 defense in every metric. That's just, Historically, Phil Parker will do that. They may not be number one in the country in the metrics again, but they'll still be top 20, top 25. So let's say that's a difference of 4 to 5 points a game on defense. Can Cade McNamara make them 4 to 5 points better on offense? Absolutely. I don't think Cade McNamara is, Mr. Air Raid, although he broke every passing record in the state of Nevada. What he is, though, is competent. He's about the perfect quarterback that Iowa could ask for given its system. He knows where the guys line up. He knows how to distribute the ball, doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He's a leader of men. Guys play hard for him. They love him. He had the offensive guys, I think, out, and he paid for him to go out to California via NIL to work out with him here during the offseason. I mean, I think people are way underselling the upgrade he is at quarterback. And I've really thought a lot about it too, Mark, watching Sam Laporta with my Detroit Lions in OTAs. Just, they are raving about him. Like, he's just like, dude, they feel like they drafted Travis Kelce, basically. This is a guy that has 1 touchdown catch in his college career. And that's because of how bad the quarterback play was. Something like they threw like 5 total touchdown passes since October of 2021. 5! Since October of 2021, or some crazy stat like that. It's historically awful, has been the Iowa offense. And I think McNamara will be a tremendous upgrade over what they had with Spencer Petras. And I think Luke Lachey and Eric All, if that back holds up, Michigan didn't think it would, so they wouldn't clear him. But if that back holds up, that tight end duo of Lachey and All, that's going to be difficult to handle now. And so I think they can make up, even if the defense does take a bit of a step back and they give up 4 to 5 points more a game. I think they'll score 4 to 6 more points per game just with competency at that position.
We recorded one of my favorite segments ripping on Brian Ferentz. So maybe we've got to go back to the old Michael Jordan, Dean Smith joke of, who's the only man in America
right. Keep Michael Jordan at 20 points. Yeah.
So maybe this applies. Brian Ferentz would be the only man that can get away with holding Iowa under its 7.5 win total in Vegas. He might be the guy that can be the only guy that could mess this up. But I agree with you. I jumped on that one when I saw it, so I misread that. So I'm on board across the board. Indiana's a lean for me. I'm not as confident as you with the under at 4 because of the 2 automatic out-of-conference wins. They are a bit, I don't want to say a mess at quarterback, but very uncertain, very inexperienced. They bring in a highly touted kid, Taven Jackson from Tennessee. I'm going to lean against you, though, on Mississippi State at 6.5. They're historically better than that. Of course, they lose Mike Leach, which is an enormous loss. But they're basically 4-0 out of conference unless Arizona can come into Starkville and steal a win. So they grab 4 out of conference wins pretty easily. And I just think Will Rogers is still the quarterback, and they still have a tremendous talent on defense. I think they're a really good team. And so I'm leaning the other way on Mississippi State. That would be the only Power 5 where I would gun to head. I'm going against you. What's interesting is you chose the 2 that you are questioning are opposite of 2 best bets that I had cash for me last year. I had Indiana over 3.5. They did get that 4th win, and I had Mississippi State over 6.5, which they did go over last year. So I'm going against both of those this year, and those are the 2 that you disagree with. All right, let's talk about something that has not occurred in many orbits around the sun of this planet. Okay, Michigan and Ohio State have the exact same preseason win total, mark, off the 10.5. Off the top of your head, can you think of the last time that was the case? I would think going into 2005, I don't know what the exact win totals are, but in regards to how these teams being evaluated to be, somebody has always had the upper hand, almost 90. That's the thing about this rivalry I think a lot of people don't understand is other than Bo versus Woody, this has actually been a rivalry of swings. This has not been a rivalry where both teams are sitting in, Ali and Frazier in the middle of the ring exchanging haymakers. Typically one has gone on a streak against the other, except for the 10-year war, which is why it is discussed in such reverent tones here, still to this day. And that's a good analogy. Of course, Ohio State would be Ali, a little bit more flair, a little bit more style there than Smoke and Joe. But 2005, is the first year that comes to mind here. Michigan coming off a Big Ten championship, but losing big in Columbus, and Ohio State gearing up with Troy Smith. And obviously he surpassed expectations. But I would think that maybe in 2005 would have been the last time that they were on equal footing. Of course, everyone's going to go to 2006. I understand.
Yeah, but Michigan came off a 7-5 season in 2005.
Yeah, exactly.
They would not have had the win total Ohio State did. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, Michigan was actually preseason top 5, I think, in 2005, because we lost that game early on, Charlie Weiss's first year. I think we were number 3 or number 4 in the country. We lost to Notre Dame at home because we brought back Henny and Hart from that 04 Rose Bowl team. But that may be the last time Michigan had a higher win total than Ohio State, I'm guessing. But I just can't think of a time that both of them were considered at this level going into the same season, at least not in recent memory. Maybe 03. Actually, I was going to guess 03. Ohio State coming off the national championship, and Michigan was preseason top 5 heading into that season as well. And both of them had a lot coming back from the 02 game. So I was thinking maybe it was 03. That would go back 20 years. All right. Even if you're right, we're right in that neighborhood. So we're talking a whole different decade plus since. So then here's the follow-up question. Which team do you think is more likely to hit the under?
Ohio State's more likely to hit the under because of the schedule, the trip to Wisconsin, the trip to Notre Dame, the more question marks. I still
it's
think
when the Wisconsin trip is too. It's right after hosting Penn State, right? Then you go on the road. Yeah.
Yes. I just think there's more question marks surrounding this team. I think that they're a boom or bust team, not to some great extreme, but they're more boom or bust. I'm more confident in where Michigan's going to land. I think Ohio State still, much like we saw in the playoffs last year, the potential to exceed Michigan, but Michigan's the sure bet. Ohio State offensive line, quarterback, secondary, just so many questions for an elite team versus what Michigan. They're slow and steady, and I know who they are.
Where's Penn State fit into this?
That is great because I am working through predictions right now. I'm going to go against my nature. My nature is to wait until the night before the season starts. That's when I like to unveil it. I like to wait until the very last second. That's not good for business. You got to get the predictions out early so people can take them in. So I'm going to force myself to go there. And I tend to default to this 11-1, 11-1, 11-1 logjam, but I think Penn State's going to trip up elsewhere. I think they're going to lose 2 games in conference. And also keep in mind, Steve, I don't know if I brought this up to you. I noticed years ago that the Street and Smiths and the Athlons of the world are too conservative on their predictions. So I started to track how many programs from season to season in the Power 5 either increased by at least 3 wins or decreased by at least 3 wins. Last season, it was 27 of the 65. Now, that's high. That's on the high end. It's usually in the 18 to 20 range. I, by nature, am conservative, just like these publications. So I typically, they're 7-5 last year. They're going to go 8-4. They're a little bit better. No, there are usually wild swings in win totals. So you got to go find and try to be a visionary and find those. And that's so much of what you accomplish is exactly that, looking at the trends in terms of the talent trends and the production trends, and then match that against the schedule. And that's why you do such a nice job against the win totals. And that's something I need to do better at because I tend to be conservative with these projections. But I've tracked this from year to year. We can count on about 18 to 20 teams, and maybe even more so with the influx of the 4 coming in to the Big 12 of that type of, think of it, a 6-6 goes to a 9-3, or a 6-6 goes to a 3-9. What I consider, and I just arbitrarily set that as a standard because I think it's reasonable to think, okay, that's a strong move either to the north or to the south, an increase or decrease in wins from year to year. And it's about a third of Power 5 football from season to season has that kind of move.
Over the last 20 plus years, Mark, on average, almost exactly 3 teams in the preseason AP top 10 don't finish in the final top 25. So that's nearly a third, just to go to the variance that you're talking about. I have put my power ratings for the preseason are completed. I'm still going through, and projecting what they mean for the season. I'm on my like 5th round. I typically don't go past 4, but I am really struggling with the Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State logjam that you just described, and here's why. My power ratings have Michigan and Ohio State almost power rated exactly even. But with the game being at Michigan and the advantage at the quarterback position, I'd probably have Michigan like a 4 to 5 point favorite in the game. But right now, I only have Michigan like a point better than Ohio State overall in a power rating. So even on a basically flip of a coin on a neutral field. I have Penn State a good 4 to 5 points behind Michigan and Ohio State. But I have Penn State like 8 to 10 points better than every other team in the Big Ten. You know? And so that's and Michigan's got to go there. It's hard to go 12-0 2 years in a row. You know, I mean, you know, and you look for places where Penn State could slip up. So I mentioned earlier, you guys got to go play Wisconsin on the road in Madtown, probably at night. The week after, you have to play Penn State. That's a classic, great spot for a letdown against, you know, one of your own alums, right? Well, Maryland gets to host Penn State before we go there. That is a great letdown spot. But dude, do you know what the history of Maryland and Penn State is? All right. I mean, it's Chris Christie at salad bars. All right. And I mean, they own that. They own them. Like they just, and they don't just beat Maryland, Mark. They like eliminate them. They like humiliate them. They emasculate them. I mean, they have been playing each other for over 100 years. I think Maryland's won like 6 or 7 times, like ever. And so I'm having a hard time pulling that plug because, I mean, I've got Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State a double-digit favorite in every single game except when they play each other. I've got Ohio State like an 11-point favorite at Notre Dame. You know, so I'm struggling trying to figure out. I have the same problem in the ACC. I actually have Clemson. I've got them power rated well above Florida State, actually. But I have Florida State power rated well above everybody else, you know? So, and LSU about 3 points better than them on a neutral field, you know? So there's a lot of that. And I'll tell you, the toughest team I'm having a hard time with is Alabama. Because I have them power rated the absolute second best team in the SEC, but I have them with the 7th best quarterback in the SEC. Last year they had the best quarterback. No, dude, think about this. Alabama's quarterback might be the guy that its new OC recruited over. And that's when they went out and got Sam Hartman. They recruited over him. The guy that he didn't want, he may be stuck with as his quarterback this year. And why does that matter? Well, they had the number 1 quarterback in the draft. And they lost 2 games last year. And 2 other games that he won for him, he pulled those out in the last minute. They could have gone 8-4 last year or 12-0. When you've got that kind of variance and you're questionable at quarterback, I don't know what to do with Alabama either, Mark. So I am really struggling right now to come up with. By now, I would normally have everything done. It's just a matter of writing it. I don't even have everything done yet, Mark.
I ranked Alabama at number 10 in the SEC at quarterback.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now you saying that, I'm going to go later today. I'm going to go back and look at my power ratings and wonder, did I overrate them actually? If you have them at 10.
Well, it's similar to an Ohio State situation at quarterback, but with less security, in my opinion.
See, I factor that in. What will the players around them be like, right? So the quarterback himself might be the 10th best quarterback, but yes. Tyler Buchner will be better at Alabama throwing to their receivers than he would have been at Notre Dame. I don't think he'll be that great, but he'll be better with that talent around him is how I do it.
And that's what I'm ranking. I'm ranking the 10th best quarterback, not the 10 best projection of statistics. Mm-hmm. It's going to be better than that. Yes, I am taking like Tom Brady, taking him to the worst team in the league. To me, he's still Tom Brady. I'm still going to try to peel all that away and rank him accordingly, not based on a statistical projection. But Alabama's tough to navigate there because they have not been in this situation since the game changed with the up-tempo and the spread and all the passing. They are back in. And I don't want to compare these guys or raise them to the level of Greg McElroy or A.J. McCarron because they were good at what they did. Milroe Jalen Milroe against Arkansas and Texas A&M was pretty awful last season. And Tyler Buckner's a guy that threw 3 picks in the Gator Bowl last year and had 3 touchdowns.
The other two, Milroe and Simpson were terrible on A-Day in the spring game. Tell me right now who Alabama's number 1 tailback and number 1 receiver is. Do you know? For sure.
Well, I know the guys, I know players, but no, they've moved from where they've been secure at running back and having 2 NFL just studs to a bunch of guys that were highly ranked that haven't proven much. The same thing at wide receiver. Now, this has been an ongoing issue now going back to when John Mechie and Jamison Williams went down.
I knew they were in trouble last year at watching the Texas game. When I saw those receivers could not get separation against the Texas secondary, that's when I thought, oh, this is not going to be the team of the century that they were billed to be heading into the season. And that proved itself out. They couldn't even get to the SEC championship game with the number 1 overall pick in the draft and the number 1 defensive player picked in the draft.
I'm wrestling with LSU and Alabama. I'm wrestling with Texas because I'm not a Sark fan. I don't believe in him.
Funny you should,
so much better.
Dude,
biggest gap between them and the rest of the league than any team in the country.
Dude, no, I'm glad you said that. My power ratings have the exact same thing. And I looked at myself and I'm like, no. I rolled my eyes. I'm like, this can't. I tried to fix it. I tried to rig it. Right? I'm like, because I break them down by conference because at least 50% of your or 70% of the schedule you'll play every year, except for Notre Dame, is against your own league. And even Notre Dame plays like 42% of its schedule against the ACC every year. So how it stacks up with the ACC is where I put them in my power ratings. And I'm like, I did that. I did it over and over and over again. This cannot be. And yes, I had the same thing. I have Texas a bigger favorite in the Big 12 than I have Georgia in the SEC. Yeah. I just have them way better than everybody in the Big 12. And I'm like, can I give a couple points for the revenge factor? It's our last chance to play them. Everybody's going to be pissed off and have the target on them. And even if I give Texas like a game and a half to Texas it, I still have them in the Big 12 championship game. Maybe like at 9-3, but with a loss at Alabama, but I still have them in the Big 12 championship game no matter what I do, if I'm being honest about my numbers.
And back to Penn State and Florida State, I think this time of year, we can all jot down Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and Michigan. And I look at that and I think, Mark, can't you find the team that's going to break through? And so for me, I think a lot of people are trying to be chic. Florida State's a chic pick. Penn State's a chic pick. Now, I'm a bigger believer in Penn State talent, and I believe in their roster more than Florida State. Florida State had a lot of guys that could have gone to the NFL, come back. So the question about their program is going to extend past this season. This may be a one-year run for Florida State. They've got to recruit better. But in this particular season, they're 10-3. The LSU win was legit, but that was opening night. They lost 3 consecutive games to 3 ranked teams that were good teams, but not great teams, NC State and Wake included. Their 6-game run at the end of the season was against bad competition. They beat a bad Oklahoma team in a bowl game. They didn't really prove that much.
Yeah, I agree with you. The thing that I'd be concerned if I'm Penn State is watching the second string defensive front manhandle my offensive line in the spring and seeing that there are several players on your defensive line on the interior that are like 280 or less, and probably against 9, maybe 10, maybe even 11 teams, depending on if Ryan Day decides to remember to run the football on that Saturday or not. It won't make a difference because of how much better talented they're going to be at several other spots. And on defense, on the edges and in the secondary, they're going to be great. But one team where you cannot be light in the loafers in the interior is mine. You cannot roll out 275-pound defensive tackles like it is 1997 against Michigan. You cannot do that. Because if you get Harbaugh in a game where he decides, I don't even have to pass today, he will do that. Right? He feels he'll enjoy it. Even though he's a former quarterback, he feels no pressure to pass the football. Right? So, all right.
We saw it in Ann Arbor last year.
Yes.
I can think of few games amongst top 10 teams where one Forget the score. Forget the Penn State had a lead based on 2 freakish plays, the pick 6, and then the other Sean Clifford run, that Michigan just manhandled them, just beat them to a pulp.
Great stuff, Mark. Always good talking to you. We'll do it again in a couple of weeks, brother. Take care.
I appreciate it, Steve.
You bet. This week's Twitter poll results, we asked you, speaking of win totals, Michigan's season win total, as we were just discussing with Mark Rogers, has been set at 10.5. Are you taking the over and the under? 78% taking the over. 22% are saying under. I think the only way Michigan goes under is if J.J. McCarthy gets hurt and or Drew Aller, we'll find out this season how it's pronounced. I've heard it both ways. Is ready to look like a 5-star number 1 quarterback recruit in the country from the first start of the year. Those are the 2 factors. Which brings us to our feedback of the week. This is from ABT20 or at Go Blue D1, holding up a sign of Juwan Howard saying, "Fire me," after I pointed out, following the NBA draft. You know, you only play 5 players in college basketball at a time, and Michigan had 2 top 15 picks and an All-American among those 3. And even more so, they were spread out. Like they played different positions, the 3 key positions: guard, wing, center. And couldn't even make the NCAA tournament. Lost to Vanderbilt, the NIT. I mean, I love Juwan Howard to death. That's maybe the worst coaching job in modern Michigan basketball history for a single season. I mean, what in the world would John Beilein do with 2 top 15 picks and an All-American? I can promise you, not lose to Vandy in the second round of the NIT. I can promise you that's the case. Hell, give Tommy Amaker 2 top 15 picks and an All-American. He could at least maybe finally find a way to get to the NCAA tournament. I mean, I love Juwan to death, but that is one of the worst single-season coaching jobs in Michigan basketball history. And if they don't make the tournament next year, and right now I would not predict them to with the state of the roster, I do think there will be a coaching change. And in general, I think, barring some unforeseen circumstance, like a COVID from a few years ago, for example, barring that, I think anybody, if you go 2 years in a row and can't make the tournament at Michigan, you should be fired. That's just inexcusable. You're 2 years in a row at Michigan, you can't be one of the 34 best. Forget just, being the automatic bid, winning the Big Ten tournament. 2 years in a row at Michigan, with everything Michigan has at its disposal, you can't be one of the 34 best teams for an at-large bid. I just think that's inexcusable, period. And I don't want to hear about admissions. Yes, I know, NIL for basketball and all of that sucks. Recruit kids you can actually get into school. How much time has been wasted signing kids? They either could not qualify, you weren't sure you could get in. That's part of the job. Do your job. I love Juwan to death, but he's got to do the job. And the job next year is NCAA tournament or bust, in my view. All right, we'll come back with another episode of Michigan Podcast in 2 weeks. Next week, we are back here right on the exact same channel with another episode of Bigger 10. Until then, you can like, rate, 5-star review, subscribe, share this episode. Help us to find more Michigan fans just like you, whether you're watching right here on YouTube or listening on iTunes and elsewhere. And don't forget, you can also follow us in between episodes on Twitter at Michigan Podcast as well. Support us at patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. Until the next time, I'm Steve Deace. Go Blue.